Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Historical Society. First of all, everybody, I hope you are all members, and if you're not, I will take your checks at any time. Jim's not here. Our treasurer, he's in Arizona for 2 months. Isn't that nice? And so therefore, Robert's taking all the pictures back there now. And remember that if you miss a meeting, they will be on Facebook, and you can look this up there, and anybody who has a computer knows how to do that. And we are also always looking for donations for the high school award, the Lori Duncan Award. And right now, we usually give one to a senior who's going on to college, who demonstrates to us a understanding of the importance of studying local history, why that is important to the community and to the individual. And we usually get a couple good applicants. So, and then they tell us what they're doing, and they usually keep in touch. So that's a good idea. And so we're looking for donations for that. Our next meeting will be, Allison, in April 21st on,
it's on James Ware.
James Ware, and Patrick Wing is going to be doing it. James Ware is the architect that did Halcyon Hall, and he also did Mountain House. Okay, and that is April 20th. Yes. I won't be here.
It's April 20th.
20th, yeah. Okay, all right. Now, tonight's meeting, and everybody knows why they're here, I hope. We are, no, he doesn't. Yes. We're going to be talking, Tom's going to be telling us how the consolidation of the church and how it all came together and how Lyall was established. The history of it. Okay? So, our gentleman from Western Michigan who has come all the way here just to this is big trip.
Hello, everyone.
Tom.
Hello. Could you quick lock the door, please? Because
Oh, boy.
communicating to. Wait for you. There was late at church too. 10:25. 10:35. Well, welcome.
Got a fast clock.
Thank you, Helen. All my bosses are here. Well, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I'm pretty sure you did. And a couple of disclaimers. One is I'm not a historian. I don't even play one on television. I'm a pastor, so I know a little bit about the history here. And so I'm depending. This will be a collaborative event, I think. So I will accept hand gestures to correct me. Dr. Lomangino knows a number of them. I prefer that you not show them all of your hand gestures that I see Sunday morning. So we'll do this together. They say that an historian is someone who raises the dead. The good ones do. They raise the dead and show them these characters to us in such a way that they seem like they're alive. I'm not an historian, so that won't be happening. It's still Lent. Why don't we get started in terms of, I taught a course at Mayor's College called Perspectives on Social Institutions. And it really, one of my favorite courses that I taught there, and that was before I was fired. But what I loved about that course is it really had to do with understanding any institution, and you could extrapolate this to be any person or any family or any country even, how to understand the history of any entity, tribe, and so on, is maybe the best way to do it is to understand the conversations that undergird the genesis, the sustaining, and for some, the ending of any particular group or entity. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not just the decisions that are made. In other words, it's the conversations that go on to birth whatever it is we're talking about, whether it's a family or a person or larger entities, even countries, nations, have this quality. If you have a chance to, if you've ever had a chance to travel to Italy, one of the things that you'll be impressed with in terms of the art there is so much of the art has to do with Mary, the person of Mary. And if you go to a particular church, for instance, that where there's some iconography or artwork having to do with the Annunciation, one of the things that you might see is that the angel, who was it, Gabriel? They're awake. Yeah. We are a biblically literate congregation. It's not Jehoshaphat. But one of the things that you'll notice, not in every painting, not in every icon, but often, you'll see that the Annunciation is portrayed with Gabriel speaking, impregnating Mary, if you will, through her ear. Speaking the Annunciation into her ear, and through that word she becomes pregnant. Now, I know a few Italians who would know the physicality of that. Do we need to get into this? It's all very embarrassing. It's not, it's not to say that this is a literal depiction of impregnating the Mother of God. But I think the point is well made in terms of that it is a word. It is a word that creates this world. In this case, the world of the New Testament, of the birth of Jesus, and all that comes afterward. It's a spoken word that creates the future, and I take that extremely seriously. Being what we call is one of my titles is Minister of the Word, where we understand this by meaning that words create worlds. And so to understand any history, either an individual's history or family history or a community's history or a country's history, anything that's been generated by human beings, it's vital to understand the conversations underneath these especially major events that occur. I would say, I would venture to say that most of our biggest moments in our lives haven't happened just on the spur of the moment, but through some sort of deep conversation. And so that's how I want to approach Lyall Memorial Federated Church tonight, if you don't mind. There's usually, what we see is, I don't know how much of this is going to be useful for you, but what we usually see is there's often, not always, but often an art of conversation dealing with any individual or family or institution, community, nation, where there's a deep conversation early on that creates the birth of whatever we're talking about, whether it's a family or an institution or country or in this case a church. There's a conversation. So if you were to see me as your psychologist, I would want to know what conversation birthed you, and there usually is one. If you know your own history well enough, what created you? What conversation created you? Maybe it occurred in the old country, in Italy or Germany or somewhere like that, where you would claim that conversation as the beginning of who you are. And we've got one here, I think. I'm guessing. I'm not a historian. And I think it happens here. It's 1911 was the first great conversation for Lyall Church. 1911. And what happened there was a report was written that was spearheaded by a number of people in this community, but the one who oversaw it, as I understand it, is John Lyall. He was somehow the one who noticed or was curious enough to want to know more about the Italian community coming into Millbrook. How am I doing? Pretty good? I'm getting there. Well, it's history, you know. Yeah, how much time do I have for this anyway? Are we done? Questions? How much time do I have?
About an hour.
What? No wonder you're getting an hour from me. Sermons are 20 minutes. Yeah, that's what I see. See that? There's a hand gesture right there. I get one of these.
We'll ask you a lot of questions then.
All right.
There'll have to be a lot of questions to fill up that hour.
Right. Preferably about Western Michigan. But in 1911, this extraordinary person, John Lyall, Reverend John Lyall, who happened to be a Reformed Church in America minister, that's what I am as well, he spearheaded this study into these crazy foreigners, these Italians, they're and Southern Italians, right? They were from, where were they from? Like Poughkeepsie or something. Funny, yeah. So they're not Northern Italians, right? That's where they were down the boot, so to speak. And that was a great mystery here. Is who are these people? And how do they behave? Do they work? Can they be trusted? Has anyone seen this study? Yeah, it's a real. Yeah, okay. Yes. So it's I would say, a marvelous and intriguing look at foreigners that have come in our midst. And one of the things that comes out of this study, I think, when I read it, was hospitality. In a biblical sense, hospitality. Hospitality, in a biblical sense, has to do with receiving people's stories, understanding their stories, and then making the bold move of taking those stories of these outsiders and weaving them integrating them into your own. For my money, that process was the birth, really, of Lyall Memorial Federated Church. There's something happened to us back then where there must have been very deep conversations about who these people are, how we can receive them into our community, really with no intention, as far as I could tell, in terms of, gee, how can we get them into our church? You don't hear that kind of language from this survey. It's just, how can we receive them as human beings born in the image of God? It's of that sort of level, and I think that set the stage for Lyall Memorial. Because we're still like it. We're still like that. That's never gone away. That's the meta story, I would say, here at Lyall. Is, in other words, if you pull one thread of a story, the entire story moves like a mobile. Is how I see that term, meta story. This is the thing that dominates, I would say, our daily experience at Lyall. It has never been different. It's always been the same. I could refer you to any day that I've worked here over a period of almost 2.5 years. I would say almost every day I've seen that at work. Not just allowing people into your space. I don't mean that. I don't mean hospitality. The word hospitality in that sense. What I mean is to wanting to have their story be a part of your own. It's a profound motion, I think, for a church, and very unusual, I would say. Very unusual. And so, I think, if I had this right, in, what is it, 1926, something like that, right? Everybody knows this better than I do. And you should, by the way, because you lived here. History. But in 1926, as we all know, 3 different denominations, Methodist, Quaker, and Reformed Church, got together, and I think got together for maybe the simple reason of survival. That's a possibility, but there's some evidence to suggest that ecumenism was alive and well even prior to this. So people knew each other. Congregations knew each other. They celebrated holidays and so on. And then there was a movement just prior to 26 where they were having mutual worship services. Everybody knows that? No? Okay, all right. Now we're out on thin ice, thin ice on knowledge. Yeah, so in 1926, it was decided that these 3 congregations, and they added a Methodist church out in, not Maggotsville, but Lithgow. Is that Charlotte's?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought that's what it was. Yeah. So a fourth congregation joined the federation. Now, what's interesting about this? There's a number of things that are interesting. One is that they carried over the name of Lyall Memorial. Reverend John Lyall was never the minister at Lyall Memorial Federated Church, right? Does everybody know that?
No.
Not one day. He wasn't here one day. He was at the Reformed Church. This is how they do it in the Reformed Church. They'll name a church after you, and then they drag it to the ground. So there's no memory of, you can't even find the foundation of the thing, this is a Calvinist understanding of fame and gratitude. Yes, we are very thankful, and now we're going to destroy any evidence that you were ever here, something I'm looking forward to. Yeah, he was, I think I want to say 22 years or so at the Reformed Church of Millbrook. And then out of their gratitude for his work, named the church after him. I do not know a single church in the Reformed Church in America that has done that. Not one. There's Jay Gould Memorial Church. That's a Reformed church, but he was a philanthropist, right? I was going to say philanderer, but that's not. I'm from Michigan, so some of these words are a little tricky. Which looks a little bit like Lyall, actually. Gould, right? A little bit bigger, a little fancier. But yeah, I don't know a single church in the Reformed Church named after a minister. And then to carry that name over into this new reality. That's one of the conversations that's lost, or at least lost to me. Maybe somebody knows that story of why they carried that name over to this building. Did anybody know that story? That must have been some talk. That's what I'm talking about. That, for me, that's really what makes history so meaningful and so important, is to know these backstories of why decisions were made. That is a huge decision for a congregation. It was a huge decision for the Methodists to take on a Reformed Church of America minister's name. I'm not sure how the Quakers would account for that, but I would imagine that would have been remarkable for them. And I wonder how he was regarded. Must have been terribly and highly regarded in Millbrook to have had a church named for him, and then a whole new amalgamation, a federation, keep the name. Does anybody know the answer to that? That's a critical question, I would say, for Millbrook.
And I would speculate it was the Lyall report of
Me
1913
too.
that pulled everyone together in thinking about the community.
Yeah, me too.
And that was Lyall's gift,
I think
to
so.
get people talking.
I really appreciate that comment. I think so too. I'm no expert but you are. And if I hear from you, then I'm bird dogging in the right place, I think. Right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, he gave himself to the community. Let me just parenthetically say this. I've been a minister for 30 years, most of it on the East Coast of the United States. I've never been in a community that reveres ministers like this one. Not even close. Not even close, except you, Skip. You really have a high regard for clergy. Yeah, that's right. But it is an amazing community we consider ourselves consigliere, is that the word? Clergy get together, we're getting together tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And we've talked about this amongst ourselves, and what are we to this place has really been the question. And consigliere is what comes to mind. Don't like that. Yeah, there's truth to it, don't you think? There's some real truth to it. And, we love that. I would say, I can speak for two others, I think. But we love that, but we also feel as though we have been given a heritage that we haven't deserved yet. But we think it's because of John Lyall, what he did here, and others, and other ministers. There have been some, I'm aware that there have been some other remarkable ministers here in this place as well. So I think what the meta story that started Lyall really had to do with hospitality. And in order to pull off a federated church, which is highly unusual, there are not very many federated churches, in the United States. We all know this, right? They're rare. This was a time in the 20s where denominations were growing. It was a time when they were really having an identity of their own slant as a particular Protestant denomination. So for there to be 3 congregations and 4 eventually that would be willing to interact and then to really marry into each other, to integrate under the same roof, that is extraordinary in church history in America. That's one of the reasons why there's so few federated churches, denominations, mainline denominations. We're going the other way. We are going to be ourselves. They were growing. This is 1920s. There's a great period of growth between 1900 and let's say 1960 or so. That was prime time for mainline denominations. So it's an extraordinary circumstance that Christians from those 3 denominational positions would come together. Highly unusual. And maybe there was an issue of finances or some other very basic issues that caused them to want to be together, but I doubt it. There was something else. There was something else. So what we see at the inception of the church is we have three distinct denominations, three very distinct traditions. I still say to colleagues, you know, they ask, well, what is the federation? And when I tell them, they usually say something like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Meaning, you know, it shouldn't be possible. Those are unusual. That's an unusual combination of denominations to come together. You would think maybe the Lutherans and the Episcopalians might get together, or the Presbyterians and the Reformed would get together. Maybe the Congregationalists might join. But these are three very distinct and in some ways not easily relatable partners. Yes? So what they did was, originally, as they were working out their life together, is that there would be three distinct, it looks like a trinity, right? Three distinct sort of persons within this structure. And so from a point of view of governance here, they split up governance here, a third, a third, a third. So a third of the administration here would be taken care of by the Reformed. A third, that would be the money, hopefully, and a third as far as president of the board of trustees and so on. And then they would switch over. As I recall, that's how they did it. So three distinct persons under one roof. It is a little bit tripartite and Trinitarian in a way, which is, I think, is interesting. But then things changed. They started to change and evolve. One of the things that started to change, especially after the 1960s, is that the whole notion of denominational loyalty started to fade. And so if you moved, let's say you're moving from Chicago to New York, and you were a Presbyterian, prior to 1960, you'd look for another Presbyterian church that you would join, because the governance would be similar, the liturgy would be similar, how they read the Bible, which is wrong, by the way, would be similar. And then, but at least you would be wrong in both cities, but which is a comfort. But anyway, that started to erode after the 1960s. So it wasn't that as important to have a denominational loyalty as it was prior to 1960. Really started to heat up after 1970. But when people moved, they typically would be content to just find a church that they felt comfortable with, a minister they felt comfortable with. That's why we're losing quite a few members now. But anyway, I digress. But so that whole denominational loyalty issue started to fade, and what happened here was that we started to get all these interlopers. We got Presbyterians, right? They have to be retrained. We had Presbyterians, you had Lutherans, we had who else showed up? Until we
had some
Baptists. Oh, impossible. Baptists. Anybody else show up?
I was congregation.
I didn't even want to hear that. I didn't know that. Mrs. Bennett, that's shameful. Congregational. Anybody else? Who else showed up? We've had a few. Well, I'll tell you who showed up. After a while, Catholics showed up. I'll bet Jews?
Yes.
This is distressing. I'm so glad I'm here in a way. I'll sleep tonight. I would say, I'm guessing now, but maybe a third of the congregation, 30%, a third of the congregation are either ex-Catholic or Catholic at Lyall. Yeah, we have Jewish Christians that are here. We have had Buddhists here in the last year or two. Hindus that are here. People who were raised by wolves Might as well say it. Another,
In Western Michigan.
yeah, Lyall, at least. But, and that's what we're seeing increasingly now, of course, is that people are coming from no background whatsoever, no religious background. As we are, I'm sure you're well aware, we are in the beginning stages of what I would consider to be a secular nation. So it came over from Europe after World War II, skipped over the Atlantic, and now is very heavily ensconced here on the eastern seaboard of the United States. You can literally track this by where Sunday morning soccer is. That's why I tell my colleagues in Michigan, if you've got Sunday morning soccer, you've got the virus. You've got the virus. Because that takes away your families and, your program level in a Protestant denomination, in the church of a mainline Protestant denomination will tank as soon as you have Sunday morning soccer. So that's what we were seeing. But then we've got, so we're seeing all these changes from a pretty rigid system. Now, each one of these pillars of our church were relating to what we would call higher judicatories. So the Friends here, the Quakers, would relate to their higher judicatory, so they go to their camps perhaps, and we would send money to that particular judicatory. Same way with the Methodists, and same way with the Reformed Church. It's always more expensive with the Reformed Church, by the way. So there was a I would say a pretty strict sense of discipline toward one's own denomination. But this all started to change, as I said, as many different sorts of people from many different kinds of faith expressions or no faith expression, a seeker, if you want to call a person that, or a God-fearer, let's say, would come into the church. Now, what do we do about that? This church was founded on three distinct denominational realities, and what happens when people from outside of these realities start to come in? At this stage, what happened was, we're not going to. We could, let's say, the conversation was, we could just unilaterally assign people to a slot. So you got the kid from Western Michigan who was raised by wolves. Congratulations, you're a Methodist, because we need one. Right? So we wanted these things weighted properly and evenly. And so there was this, what are we going to do? We're kind of stuck in this situation. We've got commitments, historical and denominational now, and so we want to honor those. So a Presbyterian would come in, well, we will be Reformed, that's close enough. Lutheran would come in, you're all right, so you're a Methodist. So that sort of thing was going on for a number of years to keep the membership lists neat and tidy. But then somewhere along the line there was a conversation. I don't know who made it, but I'm sure there are people in our church that are alive who remember it. Henry, were you paying attention? No, he says. Henry just got off a plane from Florida. Beyond that, it's none of our concern. But at some point, somebody said, "I'm not any of those. I would like to be myself." So I would like to be a fourth, part of a fourth pillar. So what do we call these people? What is that? And what does it do to us as a congregation? Well, we call these people associate members. How's that sound to you? Yeah. and welcome to my world. Because that's what we have associate members. And it feels a little bit second class, doesn't it, Kat? Yeah, there's one right there, look at her. She's miserable just hearing it.
But
You want to be a Methodist
I,
now?
I am.
Oh, excellent.
But that language meant second class.
Yeah, who are these people that we love, who have every who are every bit as marvelous as the rest? How do we give them hospitality in a way that they feel as though they are of equal value as the rest? That's where we're at now. And then as we've expanded this over the years, over the last, let's say, 15, 20 years, as we've expanded our membership, the question then will be, of course, we want a centripetal experience, not a centrifugal experience. That's centrifuge is that action is what we're experiencing in the world and in our country. I would say right now, it's centrifuge. It's out. It was going out. Well, we want the exact opposite. We want people in. So how do we theologically and socially encourage that motion in? It's a little tricky. So this is what's been done. I don't take any credit for this, especially if it's not going to work. Lynn takes credit for it. So how do we have a centrifugal experience of church that will unite and help people stick together, even with these differences? This is, I think, Lyall Church is successful in this, to be honest. It has been, and I think the country could learn from us on this score, honestly. What happened? Ask some of the members here of the church if they know the conversation behind this. But they came up with this. It's a church. We say, what is this thing that we're doing? It's a church where we see Christ as the head of the church. The person of Jesus. And we don't mean religiously. We mean the actual person of Jesus. His teaching, his death, his resurrection. He's the boss. And we try to discern what Jesus would do. We think that he is a centrifugal figure for our faith. He'll pull us together. And then I think there's kind of three strophes to this. So that's the first one. I think that's the first one. And the second is that we just call ourselves Christians. We try to keep it, in other words, we try to keep it very simple, very simple. So we have so many different kinds of people at Lyall, so many different experiences and traditions and opinions and everything else. We try to zero in on these two foci. If you what's the plural of foci? Just say anything. It's fun. Yeah, it's fun. So that's the pull and the draw. That we, Jen, it's your time to shine. No, okay. I don't blame you for any of it, by the way. So that's the draw and the pull and the focus. It keeps us centrifugal as a congregation. But we add this one. This is I love this combination. The third one is that we are. Have you heard the term non-denominational before? We're the exact opposite of that. We're interdenominational.
I like that.
Yeah, somebody's really smart to come up with that one.
Yeah.
A non-denominational church, what they do is they basically say, wherever you came from, you can leave it there. You leave your tradition, you leave your experience, you leave your story in some ways, wherever you came from. And then we will then teach you, kind of the way.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too crazy.
The right
but-
story.
The right,
The right
well, okay, you can say that, sure. But you will then go through the auger. No, that's not the word I want. That's, no, you can see where I'm coming from. But yeah, you will then be socialized, let's say, into a new reality that is part and parcel, very different than what you have known prior to coming here. We do the exact opposite. We want to maintain those stories and those traditions, those experiences. The differences at Lyall, at least, are tremendously important to us. And what that means then is that we have to practice hospitality and tolerance and the eagerness to know what another person is saying or another group of people are saying. And so what this has meant for me personally is that I bought leather furniture that won't wear out because there are always people in my office that are talking to me. Very comfortable, by the way, lovely. I bought 2 coffee makers. We tried to actually create spaces where this can happen. And so there is a wealth of conversation that happens here every single day, I would say. I go home hoarse, just talking and talking. I've never talked so much in my entire life until I came here. And I'm a hermit. I prefer to be a hermit, but that's not what the call is here. But this if you can discern it, this idea of deep hospitality that I think started with John Lyall back at 1910 or so, has been this incredible gift to this congregation. And so you'll find that if you hang out here, people are kind of loose. They're a little bit they're loose because you know you're going to be accepted. You know there's room for your story and your opinion and everything else. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to agree with your opinion. I'm hitting about 18% myself. Jan. No, we're not. I don't think we argue. But we thrash things out pretty thoroughly because we know when you know you're going to be loved at the end of it, you can afford to be thorough, and that is certainly the case here. So
Understanding.
yeah, well, that's good. There's grace, a sense of grace about the place. There's a givenness about this church, in the sense that we know that you are a child, a creation of God, and so there's a respect there. We're not Baptists, but everybody else. Yeah, there's an acknowledgement. I would say that God is at work in every person, and we're all in a different spot for obvious reasons. We have different histories and loves and hatreds, I would say as well. Different political point of views, and so on. And so I think this idea that, or this gift that John Lyall gave us, and those that were with him, because you can't with one stroke command these things. So there must have been a community as a part of this conversation. It's really a beautiful thing. I love this place, obviously. I'm sorry we're out of time.
Question, no. Back in the beginning, when the 3 came together, did they have 3 different ministers, one
No, that's a good point, yeah, that's a good point, right.
How did they, I mean.
They
because
agreed on
are
one
so-
minister.
They all agreed on one minister at that point.
Well, with the three different traditions, how did they come up with an agreement of one minister? And,
Because, I mean, the Quaker would be, or the Friends.
right.
I mean, I don't know what area, whether they were the Orthodox or, but how they came to even worship with the other ones, because they didn't really believe in a minister,
Yeah,
at
right,
my understanding.
right, I mean, the whole thing is a crazy situation. Well, they, traditionally, they've called Presbyterians.
The first minister was a Methodist,
Was a Methodist.
1 year.
Yeah, 1 year. And then who was the next guy that came up?
Thomas Holbrook, wasn't it?
Holbrook, and and he was Presbyterian.
Presbyterian.
They were all Presbyterian, even though Holbrook is a Dutch name.
They were Presbyterian ministers, the first ones?
Almost all of our ministers have been Presbyterians.
So Reverend
Right.
Daniels that
Minor league.
baptized me was Presbyterian. Is that what you're trying to
She asked how it worked, like with one minister and the three denominations, and especially the Quakers, because they do have very different beliefs. For example, they don't actually participate in sacraments. So, and when we first came here, there were quite a few Quakers, and on the Sundays that we would serve communion, they would very quietly, and you wouldn't even know they were leaving. They would just quietly get up and walk out of the sanctuary. So they did not participate, but they worshiped with us.
So they
We had
weren't
the
force
same
fed. I
worship.
heard they were force fed.
But that's how those kind of things were worked out with the Quakers.
Yeah.
The rest of us were,
Yeah, that's.
did the sacraments.
I've seen that a couple times since I've been here too. Kat, did you want to say
And
something?
was there also Quaker meeting that has always happened before service, or?
I don't know.
It hasn't
How long?
always, no.
Carl Asmark instituted that, I
8
believe.
years ago, we
Yeah.
started that.
Oh.
Yeah.
8 years ago.
But then, you know, what do you do from a liturgical point of view? You've got a group, a tradition that believes in silence. So how do you integrate that into a Protestant service? We have all sorts of problems like that that are interesting to solve. One of them has to do with my wife Maria. When we have prayers of the congregation, she plays music underneath my prayers, so people can go into a meditative place. They don't listen to a word I say. So I'm just mumbling anyway, but it works. Or a nap. It's a little pleasant nap. There you go. We do our best. Yeah, from a liturgical point of view, just how does a person approach God? That's a long-standing and I would say terribly significant discussion coming from many points of view, and how to pull that together in a worship service is challenging, and makes it really interesting for a minister. I'm as I said, a Reformed Church minister. Reformed Church in America. We've been around. We're the oldest Protestant denomination in the country. And one of our claims to fame, I don't know if we're still famous for it, but we have been over many centuries, is that we're really, we take ecumenicity extremely seriously. God's work in another person's tradition, we take that terribly seriously and honor that. And so I thought it was very interesting that John Lyall was a Reformed Church minister. That's typical of us, or it should be typical of us. You see this actually yesterday in the Dutch election, where you had a very non-ecumenical candidate, let's say, Geert Wilders, right? He was pretty soundly defeated. That is an ecumenical hospitality issue in the minds and hearts of the people in the Netherlands. I thought that was very telling and typical that they would defeat him on that basis. So, anybody else? Do we have punch?
Do you have minutes of meetings from the beginning, from the early times?
Yeah, I'm sure there are, minutes,
I'm not too sure of that.
well, we're gonna,
I'm not too sure of that.
no, I don't know. It'd be interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes to a practical issue too, you know, when you take minutes, do you just take the decisions? You know, if I had my druthers, I would like to know the conversation behind it, so if you're part of a, you know, any kind of a trustee on a board or something like that, that's something to consider, it's a hassle. But later on, the people that follow us might find that terribly important to know, maybe not, well, who said what and how they said it, and, you know, your drawings.
Like the why of this happened.
Yeah, it's
I
the
mean,
why,
we know the
yeah.
Lyall report and
Yeah.
how that was important and how what a figure he was in the community.
Yeah, yeah,
But why then the churches coming together?
that's right.
At that time, when most of them were growing individually.
Yeah.
David, do you know that?
Well, most of the writing on it is that the congregations were getting smaller and smaller.
Very
So-
unusual at that time.
So this was an opportunity to pull it together.
Yeah.
And Lyall
I've heard
inspired that.
Yeah.
And it was because of his report that he got the entire community talking
Mhm.
about issues that were really important.
Mhm.
And there was such an anti-Catholic, anti-Italian, I should say,
Right.
dialogue going on. And he's the one who basically looked at it to see what the issues were.
Mhm.
And he was, today we read it, and it's interesting. But in 1913, to have put that in writing
Yeah,
was extraordinary.
that's it.
And basically, his bottom line was, we are all made in God's image.
See here, that's
All
what I'm
of us.
talking about, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's really at the core of, and that's not true of every church, by the way. You know, they might
And he
have
inspired that.
lip
One-
service, but-
Another element that he did, which was highly unusual at the time, is that he would have a black constituency and services at the Reformed Church, and the hymn sings, if you will, that became extremely popular with the Bennett girls, because they'd walk across the street for the music component for it. So it was not just the church community, but it was the Bennett community
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
and the organist was
Well, and
there.
you can see that same sort of feeling here at Lyall as far as our community
Mhm.
feeling is, you know, I would say this church is incredible as far as sort of outreach, face-to-face outreach out in the community. That is still very much alive. I mean, it's incredible what the church does.
I think it's also interesting, it's the Italian artisans who built the church.
Yeah, the whole thing is amazing. It's a great story, what's happened here, so. Anybody else have, yes?
Yeah, how old is the building itself?
26.
26, yeah, 1926.
And where did that?
Made from a kit. Sears.
How did that figure into all the story of the church?
I don't know, that I don't know. The architectural.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot written on it. The company the architects are out of New York City, and highly influential, Ewing and Allen. And Ewing and Allen were sort of aristocrats, if you will, for church design. So they came in because of the other community members who were here. And then Anderson, who was the actual builder, was unique. Anderson was out of Poughkeepsie, but most of Anderson's workers were Italian. And so you put that all together,
That's
you've got
cool,
the
yeah.
stonework, you've got the community, you've got the involvement.
Wonderful.
And one of the things I love about it is the dedication booklet outlines all of the elements and how much the building cost. They had to remove the shed. The people who took the shed apart that had been part of the gas works, all the elements that had to be reconfigured for it, and it's all documented.
That's awesome, yeah, that's awesome. This is also a good example of a community corporate memory.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know anything. No. Anybody else? Yes?
Do you know of any other federated churches that comprise
different denominations?
Yeah, all federated churches comprise different
Is
denominations.
that part of
But
the?
I don't know of any federated church that comprises this combination.
So it could be all different
Sure, sure.
combinations?
Yeah, the idea, the difference between like a federated church and a union church, let's say, typically union churches, and there are many of those, will take sort of kissing cousins and get them together, so that there's very little difference as far as church polity and liturgy and all that stuff. So you won't have too many surprises when you come in. But a federated church means that you maintain the integrity of those initial traditions. That's what makes it fun, I think. Interesting, a little chaos. So,
So was there just a federated church that was just federated?
no, they all come from different.
So it's
That's my understanding.
But what was, it's the Reformed Church, I mean, when was it Reformed? Did it start in the Reformation?
Yes, John Calvin. Yeah, our man.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're talking about churches, I just want to make Grace is still celebrating their 150th year, and this next Sunday at noon, we're having a meeting there. David is talking about race and grace, and we'll be talking about the whole Underground Railroad, the slavery in the area, and right up straight through different issues that have come up in the community here. Right, David?
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's, I think you probably bring up the fact that we have a stained glass window of Lincoln, and we're talking about having other stained glass windows of more, modern people. Yeah, go ahead.
I just an invitation. Every Thursday here at Lyall, we have what's called Lyall lunch. And there's a bunch of us that go into the kitchen and we make these fantastic homemade soups. And we have sandwiches and dessert. How many of you go to Lyall lunch? Okay. It's free. And one of the reasons we did it is just to get people together. So we have a whole smorgasbord of persons that show up, somewhere between, I would say, 30 and 55, somewhere in that neck of the woods. You're very welcome to come. You can, it's at 11:30 every Thursday. It's not a soup kitchen, so you can have money. You don't have to give us any. And you're very welcome to come. And so we'd love to